So in the last class, did we talk about this local minima, local maxima, and this hills, plateaus? Did we talk about this particular funnel?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fantastic. So then we actually talked about a particular database, how we can retrieve the sequence of the database, right, from a particular protein, right? So now today we're going to talk about a different database. We're going to start with a different database, another database that we're going to actually require for our protein modeling. Okay. So this is the RCSB PDB website that we're going to talk about. Let me send you the link. Okay. So just need to click on the link that I've sent you. If you click on it, this particular website will open up. So this is one of the database, but as the name suggests, this is the RCSB protein data bank. Now though it's a protein data bank, but still you are going to find all sort of molecules, structure of all sort of molecules here, all kind of biological macromolecules. And you take, if you take a deep look, you're going to see that this has 180419 biological macromolecular structures. Okay, that means these number of proteins or biologically important molecules structures are solved and deposited into this particular database. So what is structure database? Why should I deposit a database? Why should I deposit a structure? Now remember, in the UniProt we were actually finding out that yes, there are some kind of structures of a protein that are usually there, right? Now those are actually, that is actually a derived database. That means that particular database actually takes all the information from this RCSB PDB website and discusses all the, yeah, yes, yes, follow me. Okay. Now why is this important? This is important because this particular database only stores the experimentally solved protein structure, only experimentally solved protein structure. Now the protein, now when I say protein, I usually mean protein, DNA, RNA, any kind of thing. Okay, now this particular database is a database that houses only the solved structure of the biological macromolecule. Now that can be a protein, that can be a DNA, that can be an RNA, that can be a now when I say DNA, there are actually various kind of DNA. You know, there is DNA does not only have a duplex structure, it also has many higher order structure, like it has a G quadruplex structure, it has a G triplex structure, the DNA sometimes assumes a I motif structures. Now these are higher order structures that are present particularly in the regulatory areas of a particular DNA, for example in the promoter regions, or in the 5' 3' UTRs, or in the transcriptional start site, or at the domains where at which they can regulate the gene expression. Okay, now they actually regulate this particular gene expression, because we know that gene expression is a very important thing and that should be regulated, because overexpression or underexpression of a particular gene might cause some disease into you, right? So that is why these structures are really important, and all the structures which are solved either by NMR or by X-ray crystallography, those are actually stored and deposited into this particular website. Okay, now apart from it, but what is the other importance of this particular thing? The other importance is that when we talk about homology modeling, so today we will talk about this modeling of a protein, how we can model a 3D structure of a protein. We're going to know that all they take all the informations from this particular database only. They come and find out and try to find out the homologous protein, or they try to find out what sort of protein have which kind of structure, and they try to deduce that structure from this particular database and tries to fit it into your protein or any kind of molecule that you have. Okay, and they try to deduce your structures. But I'm going to talk about the importance of this later. First, let's see what kind of things that we can have. Now, in this particular fragment, you can see this is a particular thing where you can deposit the structure as well. Okay, you can obviously deposit the structure. For example, let me show you one thing. Let me show you. It's not there. Okay, don't worry. So okay, so the thing is that first we have to simply write down the name of the particular protein or anything that you want to search. For example, suppose I want to know the structure of a VGFA protein. Okay, so what to do? I'm going to write VGFA. Once you write VGFA, number of words are going to come. You can find out signaling protein, neuropilin 2 VGFA, or gene name VGFA. Let's click on this particular VGFA. As you click on this particular thing, it's going to give you this particular protein. So this is the 5. This 5DN2 is the PDB ID. This is the ID that is actually associated with each of the unique protein or structure that are deposited. They get a unique deposition ID or the PDB ID. This is the PDB ID of this particular protein. Okay. And what is this? This is the NRP2 beta 1 dominant complex with a peptide corresponding to the C terminus of VGFA protein. So once you click here, it's going to open up and going to show up the entire solved structure. So this is the particular solved structure of the protein. So what is important here? So first is going to give you the name, this signaling protein, the organism in which it belongs to. For example, this particular protein comes from Homo sapiens. Now obviously when this belongs to Homo sapiens is good, but what is the expression's name? Again, at next you have the expression system. Can anyone say what is the expression system and what is the importance of this particular thing? Expression system. Anyone? Now see, as I have told you that solving a particular protein structures requires many things. The foremost important thing is that you require a purified protein in high quantity. Okay, and obviously the amount of protein that is produced in a particular cell, in a human cell, it is really low. It's very low in quantity. If you try to purify a protein found in human cell, you can't achieve a high quantity because it's a very low quantity protein that you're going to find in a human body. You are only going to find in amount, for example, 10 micromole or 20 micromole, but that's not good enough to solve the protein structure. Okay, so usually you require higher amount of protein. So for that you have to clone that particular protein and express it in an E. coli system or in a bacterial system or in a viral system. Why? Can anyone say why? Why do I need to express it in a viral system or a bacterial system?
To obtain large quantity of protein.
Yes, and how can they give us huge quantity of protein?
By
Sir, by recombinant DNA technology.
Yes, very good. But specifically by?
Sir?
Specifically by
Sir,
what?
are you asking for the enzyme that is restriction NMOPS?
No, not restriction enzyme. I get it, but what's the? I mean, if you clone it, you are going to clone it where? Inside the original DNA.
Bacterial cells.
Plasmid. That's good. Plasmid. Why? Because plasmids have higher copy number, right? Plasmids have multiple copy number. They have high copy number, and that is why from a single DNA you can't get enough protein. But in plasmid you can have at least 200, 500, 1000, 2000 copies of plasmid, and that means 2000 copies of the same protein. And that is why you can get higher amount of protein from that particular sequence. Just give a minute. And once you do it, you are going to get huge quantity of protein, and that will allow you to purify it according to your own need. So if you need to purify it tremendously, you can obviously do it. Okay, so that's why we need to clone it and express it in a viral system or in a bacterial system. And in this particular case, this protein had been, though it's a human Homo sapiens protein, it has been expressed in the E. coli and specifically in the K12 species. Okay. Now the next thing comes is the mutation. The mutation is no. What is no mutation means? Means while cloning, sometimes what happens, as someone has mentioned, that DNA, recombinant DNA technology, and then again someone said what was the term they used? The cut site, right? Someone said cut site. So sometimes what happens, you know how to clone a DNA, right? And while cloning, what happens, sometimes you make a mistake, and as a result you might incorporate one or two mutations, and when that happens you might get a single amino acid mutation or one or two base mutation. That kind of thing might happen. Okay, so is there any kind of mutation like that? It says no, there is no. This is a pure wild type protein. Okay, and that means it has no mutation. And after that you get to see the IDs, that when it was deposited at the at 2015 and all, and who were the authors who deposited it? They are the authors who actually deposited this. But the main important thing is this experimental data snapshot. The first thing comes is the method. By what method have they solved the structure? And you can see that yes, they have solved the structure by X-ray diffraction. And as I've already told you, you can use X-ray diffraction, or you might use NMR spectroscopy or cryo-EM, right, to solve this structure. And that's why they have used this particular thing. And this is the resolution. Have I discussed resolution in the last class?
No, sir.
Okay. So can anyone say what is resolution? What do I mean by resolution? Or what does this particular word means, resolution?
Sir, resolution is when how specifically, I mean, how clear we can see 2 points which are closely related.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How closely spaced two points are, right, in resolution. So what happens is that if 2 points are very closely spaced, they have very lower resolution. Okay, that means that, for example, simply make 2 dots on a single plane and then try to move away from that particular point page. You're going to find that after a certain distance, you won't be able to distinguish 2 points as 2 different points. It's going to seem like that 2 points are merged to become one. And the a more beautiful example would be if you stand in front of a railway track, you're going to find out that after a certain distance, the track have merged together, right? And you look at each direction, you're going to find out that after a certain distance, though we know that railway track can never merge, but you feel that after a certain distance, the two track have merged together. That is the resolution. That how far you can distinguish 2 points as to separate entity. So in respect to this protein structure, the resolution means this particular X-ray structure have been able to distinguish 2 atoms as 2 distinct atoms if they are separated by a distance of 1.95 angstrom. And if they are separated suppose if 2 atoms are separated by only 1.5 angstrom, then they have taken that particular atom as a single atom. They are not able to distinguish those 2 separate atoms as 2 separate atoms. Understand? So obviously for our experimental purpose, the lower the resolution, the better. And anywhere, in any structure, if you find out that the resolution is less than 3 angstrom, it's better. Any structure which has resolution less than 3 angstrom, it is a very good structure. But obviously the lower the better. Okay. And generally X-ray structures have much higher resolution, whereas the NMR spectroscopy, they don't offer great resolved structure. They generally have a resolution of 6 angstrom or 5 angstrom, something like that, whereas X-ray is going to give you resolution as low as 1.25, 1.5, like that. Okay. And after that you get to see this is the validation. The validation means this is the 3D structure report. That means how better your structure is. That's once you remember when I talked about the Ramachandran plot. Remember the Ramachandran plot I talked about the last class? That I talked about that generally all amino acid, they generally tend to lie at the allowed regions of a particular protein or in a Ramachandran plot, they tend to focus at the allowed regions or the red regions, whereas very few amino acids, generally the proline and glycine, they are generally present at the disallowed regions, right? But it's not that always they are present, but they might be present. So in this particular case, if you solve a protein structure, obviously a naturally occurring protein is never going to have its amino acid in the disallowed regions. In this particular case, what percentage of amino acid are in the Ramachandran outlets? You have 0. That means it's a very beautiful structure. It's a very beautiful structure. That's why you find out there is no structure in the Ramachandran outlier. There is 0% of amino acid in the Ramachandran outlier. In case of side chains, now side chains are highly fluctuating. Side chains are highly fluctuating because they are not, since the backbones are usually the most stable ones, whereas the side chains, they fluctuate a lot. But in this particular case, you have 0.4% of the side chains in the outliers, whereas all the rest of them are present in the allowed regions. But what about the clash score? The clash score means if there are any two atoms which are overlapping with one another. Do you have any? And obviously you see that yes, there is none. There is none. There's only one. That means anything that is present in this blue segment is very good. Okay, it's very good. So this actually gives you the beautifulness of your structure also. If you found out everything is in the blue region, have excellent score, you find out that this particular PDB structure or this particular protein structure is a beautiful structure. Okay, so that is the beautifulness of this particular thing. So now coming to the next segment, if you simply scroll down, this is the particular paper where they have solved the structure, and you can simply read down this paper. You get to know about what they did, how they have solved the structure, everything. And again, if you come down, you're going to find out the entire molecule. So this is a neuropoline 2. There are 4 chains, A, B, C, D. Each chain is 156 amino acid long. Okay, and this belongs to Homo sapiens. And again, if you come down, this is the particular sequence of the protein, and this has the aligned protein. And what is the aligned thing? Alignment protein is that this particular protein and this actually matches with one another. And if there are any certain differences, it is going to be marked as yes, there are differences. Okay. And if there is no differences, you are going to find out no differences at all. And this gives you the other molecule. Now, apart from in this particular case, how many molecules are there? There sometimes you might feel that since it's already stating that it is in complex with a peptide, so that means this particular molecule also has another peptide molecule attached to it. So this is the molecule 2. This is the VGFA 1. This is the image. This is the 28 sequence length. And apart from it, you have this is the other molecules that are associated with this particular molecule. One is the glycerol, one is the diethylene dioxide molecule. So these are the ligands that are associated with this particular molecule, and these ligands are sometimes associated with while solving a structure. Can anyone say why? I think you don't know. Let me say. The ligands are generally associated with this particular protein molecules because, as you know, while solving the structure, how do they solve the structure? They simply bombard that particular protein with X-rays. Okay, they bombard the protein with X-rays, and as a result, the X-rays, they simply tend to deflect away that particular X-ray, and as they deflect away the X-rays, they tend to get a shadow behind. They tend to get a shadow behind. But the problem is that you don't have a place to start. How do you know that what is the shadow of which atoms? For example, if I say, suppose you 4 people are standing. Suppose I simply show you the shadow of 4 person and I say you identify the person. It will be really impossible for you to identify 4 person from the shadow, right? If I don't say anything, if I don't give you any clue, will you be able to identify the person from the shadow? You can't. So generally, if I tell you that yes, this particular person A is standing on the left, the person on the left is A, the person on the right is D. So now you can say, acha, so the left is A, so B was standing next to A, so this person is B, and C was standing in between B and D. So this must be C, and one to the almost to the left side is the D. So this must be D. So I have to give you certain hint. Similarly, in the case of X-ray structuring also, sometimes they associate a ligand with a particular protein because the ligand have a higher density of electrons. So they generally tend to deflect the X-rays a little more. So you can easily identify which is the ligand from the shadow. And once you identify the ligand, you already know where the ligand is binding, because we know the ligand has a binding domain at this particular site. We already know the ligand binds to this particular amino acid, or ligand binds to arginine 15. So you know that the shadow of the ligand indicates that this is arginine 15. So you know this is arginine 15, and then you need to calculate backward from there. So the shadow next to arginine 15 will be 14th amino acid. So next to that it will be 13th amino acid. So like that you can do the back calculation and calculate the entire protein structure. And that is why the ligand molecules are sometimes associated with a particular protein molecule while solving the structures. Is this part clear? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Understand. So that is why whenever you simply try to find out a particular or download a particular structure, you're going to find out that yes, they require this kind of things. Okay. So after you have these things, next you get to see the experimental validations, the data. That means the unit cell length, and these are actually not required for you. These are only required if you are a structural biologist. If you are not a structural biologist, these are not required for you. Okay. But the main thing is that you can also visualize this particular, how is the protein going to look like. So simply click on this 3D view here. Here you have this 3D view, simply click on it. And it's going to open up this particular protein structure inside in the web version only. So see, in the web version you're going to find out how the protein is going to look like without downloading the molecule. So this is the protein. And this red tiny balls, these are the water molecules that are associated with this particular protein. And you see, as you hover your pointer to this edge, at this particular edge left side corner, you are also going to find out the amino acid number. See the amino acid number, this is threonine 71 where I am pointing out. The point where I am pointing, this is actually isoleucine 69. So this like this that you can also find out the residue number and all. Okay, and even if you simply select a particular residue, it is going to get zoomed in and it's going to show out the entire connection at that particular location. It's going to show up how this particular molecule is connected to one another. So these are the hydrogen bond that is actually keeping this particular secondary structure stabilized. Okay, so like that, this is actually allows you to visualize the entire structure like that. Or you can simply stand up and suppose this is the entire protein structure sequence, and if you simply select a particular amino acid from here, it's going to get highlighted and going to show you. So for example, suppose this is the this is the Y. So if I select it, see, this is the Y. This is the Y. Okay, the Y means this is the tyrosine. Okay, so like that you can visualize it accordingly without downloading it. But obviously, it's obviously better to download the structure and visualize it. How to download it? See, there's an option called download files here. Simply click on it, and there you have an option called PDB format. Simply click on PDB format and it's going to get downloaded. And as I've told you, install PyMol. I think you have all installed PyMol, right? And using PyMol, we can visualize the structure entirely. Okay, so today we're going to actually see how to visualize the structure and all. Okay, so just keep something. If you want to download the structure, simply click on this particular PDF format. You can download the structure from there on accordingly. Okay, that's all. Now another thing is that, for example, now suppose this is what this particular database only gives you the structure of a particular molecule, only the structure, nothing else. You are not going to find out the importance, the function and all, or for that you have UniProt, but for this you are going to need the PDB website. Okay, only for the structure. Or you can suppose, and this is a particular thing here from where you can actually try to find out, or you can name it. For example, let me show you one of the structure that I have solved. So Seville ELJ is one of the it's a insulin derived molecule that I have actually solved. See, I have solved this structure this year only. It's 2017 published. It's a prion derived tetrapeptide. Okay, it's a small peptide that I have developed to stabilize this insulin molecule, and so there's a whole way why I have solved this structure and all. So it's simply open it. It's an NMR solved structure. So I have solved this structure using the NMR method, and say this is the deposition author, Nilanjan Banerjee, my name. Okay, and you get to see this is a hormone, and this is obviously this particular insulin belongs to, though it's a human Homo sapiens, but it also is a bovine insulin, so it also belongs to the cow. Okay, and it has no mutation, but you're not going to find out all the other essentials from from this particular experimental data snapshots. Why? Because this is not a X-ray structure, this is a NMR structure, and NMR structure is not going to give you the resolution and all. Okay, so in this particular case I have see, in this particular matter I have the Ramachandran. This 1.5% of the amino acids are in the Ramachandran outlier, and it's a huge, not huge, 1.5% is acceptable, but it's not zero. And why not zero? Because obviously the NMR structure have low resolution structure. Okay, they are lower resolution, so a lot of amino acids are going to be specifically the lysines, not lysine, the glycines and prolines are in the outliers, and that can be there because in NMR structure you are not, since you are not, NMR is a solution structure. Okay, in case of X-ray you are crystallizing a particular protein and getting the snapshot, but in NMR since it's a solution structure and you're not crystallizing a particular protein, you are going to have multiple conformations, because in solution a protein achieves multiple conformations. In your body a protein have multiple conformations, it can shuffle between conformation A, B, C, D, a lot of like that. Okay, but in crystallography, since you are crystallizing a protein, you are entrapping a protein at a particular conformation, and that's why it's easier to solve the structure of one protein conformation. But in solution NMR, a protein is going to shuffle in multiple conformations, so you are going to find out that a particular amino acid is simultaneously present at 4 different locations. So obviously the RMSD is going to be high. Okay, so that is why the Ramachandran outlets are more in case of NMR structures. Okay, so this is the paper where we have solved the structure, and my job was to solve this protein structure using NMR and find out how what's actually happening and all. So you can read this particular paper if you want. Okay, and this is the molecule that we have designed. We can actually stabilize this particular protein. Okay. Also, that's what about this whole particular database. But why should I'm telling you about this particular thing? Because this is really important for homology modeling and all. So why do we require it? So now we're going to shift on the theoretical basis of this particular thing. So now whenever you have a particular protein, when you try to solve a structure of a protein, there might be 3 kind of targets. One can be a new fold target. What's a new fold target? New fold target means it's a kind of protein which has no similar fold in PDB. Now, in RCSB PDB website, in this particular website, all the proteins whose structures are solved are actually deposited here. All the proteins whose structures are solved are deposited here. So once you model a protein, the algorithm actually comes to this website and tries to find out sequence similarity with your protein and all the other proteins that are present in this database, and try to find out the similar sequence or similar structure. For example, suppose today if I upload a particular new protein molecule. Okay, I am uploading a new protein molecule, and that particular protein is absolutely new because that particular protein has been isolated from a bacteria that is found in a volcanic, that is actually present in a volcanic crater. So obviously very few bacteria have been isolated and protein have been solved from the volcanic crater. So obviously it is very much dependable that a same kind of protein structure has not been found or solved later earlier. So in that particular case, that particular kind of protein can be a new protein. In that particular case, that kind of protein structure is really unsolved. Nobody has yet solved a protein like that. So that kind of protein, if you go to this PDB website, you are not going to find a protein which have similar kind of structure or similar kind of sequence or similar kind of fold. Okay, so then that will be a new fold target. On the other hand, you might have a protein which might have a homologous protein whose structure is solved in the PDB database. For example, suppose today I might say that please draw the picture of a particular man. For example, what people does. Suppose you might have seen that, yes, someone says that a police goes and says that, have you seen that particular criminal running away? He said that yes sir, we have seen that particular criminal. I have seen that particular criminal. So can you make a drawing? Yes, I can describe that man. So they starts describing, and the other person who is there, it starts to draw that particular person. Okay, now it actually depends upon how well you have seen that particular man. And if you have seen that particular man very well, then you can give a very pretty accurate description, so that he or she might make a sketch, a pretty accurate sketch. Okay, or suppose there is some twins in your locality. So if you know one of the twins, so you can obviously guess that how his or her sister or brother is going to look like, because they are twins, they are going to be similar, right? So you can obviously guess how they are going to look like. The same thing happens. So if you have already solved a particular homologous protein structure, for example, you have hexokinase and glucokinase. Now hexokinase structure is already solved. So suppose when you identify glucokinase and you say that yes, the glucokinase and hexokinase share 80% homology, they have 80% of sequence similarity. So obviously glucokinase is going to look like hexokinase. At least 80% of the glucokinase is going to look like hexokinase. Now in that particular case, that will be a homologous molecule. Now homologous molecule can be two kind of things, a easy homologous or hard homology. Now what is easy homology? Easy homology means they have already a homologous protein, hexokinase, glucokinase, they have a homologous protein. They are exactly look alike, easily. So if you have already solved the structure, 80% of the structure is going to be same, and the rest of the 20% structure I have to predict. And it's really easy to predict the rest of the 20% because 80% of structure is solved. It's like giving an exam. I already know 80% of the answer. So I can easily write down, I know I am going to get 80. For the rest of the 20%, let me think. Let me try to solve. If I can solve it out, then I am going to get whatever I solve, that will be a benefit for me. And even if I could not solve anything, at least I am sure that I am going to get 80% marks, right? What about hard homology? Hard homology means that particular protein might not be a direct link up. It might be a far away link up. For example, suppose today you found out a hexokinase from a fish. Okay, now hexokinase of fish and hexokinase of human is not going to be similar. It is completely going to be different. Hexokinase of a zebrafish and hexokinase of a human is going to be different, right? It's going to be different because it belongs to a different species. Now hexokinase of for example, in the previous class, have I shown you the sequence? Oh no, I haven't shown it. But you know what happens is that the hexokinase, they have a really different setup. They have whenever you jump a species, the structure of protein changes a lot. And when that species jumping is a tremendous variability. For example, you are human, and rather than going to a plant or to a ape, you are simply diving to a fish. The protein structure will alter tremendously. Though you are eukaryotic, the fish is also a eukaryotic system, but still, since the species is not at all linked, human and fish are completely separate, two distinct species. the structure is also going to be completely different. So it is going to be a distance homologous, and when you have a distance homologous method, the homology is not at all maintained properly. You might not have a 80% homology, you might have 40%, you might have 30%, you might have a very low percentage of homology. Okay, in that particular case, it will be a hard homology. On the other hand, the other can be a fold recognition target. Now, in this method, what happens, rather than finding out the homology of the entire protein, we tend to focus on small fragment of the protein. We tend to focus on finding out the proteins which have similar fold. When I say similar fold, what I mean? I mean if they have similar pattern or not. Similar pattern means, now a particular protein has multiple motif. For example, this zinc finger motif. Have you heard this name, zinc finger motif?
No, sir.
Okay, so can you name another such motif? Apart from zinc finger motif, what other kinds of motifs are there in a protein? What are the other structural motifs? There is beta barrel motif, Greek key motif, beta alpha beta motif, beta meander motif. There are multiple motifs. Okay. Now these motifs are really short span of sequences. A short span. Usually they comprises of 10 to 15 amino acid, or 5 to 10 amino acid, or 4 to 5 amino acid. They are small domain. Now whenever you have a small domain, it is really easy to predict, because those motifs are, suppose a zinc finger motif or a Greek key motif. The Greek key motif have universal structure. Whether that particular motif is present in fish, or whether that particular motif is present in mosquito, whether that particular motif is present in Homo sapiens, they have similar structure. So rather than finding out the homology in entire structure, we tend to find out the common motifs in the protein. And whenever we find out common motifs, we tend to draw out the structure according to those small fragments of motifs. Okay, understand? So this is another way of predicting the structure. So don't worry, I'm going to tell you how to do that. But apart from that, this is all okay whenever you have a particular protein whose structures or which have a homologous structure. But what about if you have no homology at all? What if you have no homology at all? Or what if you have a homology but 80% homology? What about the rest of the 20%? How are you going to find out the structure of the rest of the 20%? Are you going to give out any random structure? Or how the algorithm is going to work? How is the algorithm going to work? They have some way to do it. What to do it? By finding out the, or by taking a look into the amino acid, because there are different amino acid, and different amino acid have different propensity to form different structure. For example, the malic amino acid, that means methionine, alanine, leucine, glutamate and lysine, they all have high alpha helix forming propensity. That means wherever, if you have a particular domain or a motif that is rich in this malic, that particular domain is going to achieve a alpha helix structure. That particular domain is going to achieve a alpha helix structure. Why? Because they tend to form alpha helix. So suppose you have a particular stretch, and in that particular stretch you have, that particular stretch is rich in malic, but along with malic you have other amino acids, like you have isoleucine, you have tryptophan, but that is one or two in number. But most of the cases you have this malic amino acid. So if you have a rich domain that is rich with this malic amino acid, the protein or that particular domain is going to fold like an alpha helix domain. Okay, but two amino acids called proline and glycine, they are actually known as helix breaker. Why? Because if they are present, they break up the helix. So that is why if you have a malic amino acid and you have one glycine and 12 proline, it's going to break up that particular helix. but it's not always that they are going to break up. Suppose you have a huge long stretch of amino acid and you have a glycine at the center or a proline at the center, and towards the left you have all the amino acids that are forming alpha helix, and to the right you also have the amino acids that are forming alpha helix, and there is a glycine at the center. So obviously at that particular point the alpha helix can't, or the glycine can't break up the helix, because the peer pressure would be too high to form helix. So the glycine, though it is a helix breaker, it will participate in the formation of alpha helix. But suppose that motif is really short, and then what happens? Then alpha helix is really broken up if there is a glycine and proline. But why do they break up? Because the proline, it does not have a free amide group, and since it doesn't have a free amide group, it cannot participate in the hydrogen bond, and alpha helix is actually stabilized by formation of alpha helix, by formation of this hydrogen bond. And if you can't form hydrogen bond, then obviously you can't be a part of this alpha helix. And what about this glycine? Glycine is a small molecule and it's really flexible. It's such a small molecule, it's highly flexible. So it is conformationally too much flexible, and that is why it does not participate in a stable alpha helix form. It tends to break up the hydrogen bond. It can participate in hydrogen bond, but it tends to break up the hydrogen bond because it is fluctuating a lot, it is shuffling a lot. Okay, so due to that it often breaks up that particular part, and that is why generally proline and glycine are found at the end of the alpha helix or at the start of the alpha helix. At the two extreme edge of the alpha helix they are found. But yes, it's not a hard and fast rule that they are never going to form alpha helix. No. If there is a huge amount of malic amino acids to the right and left of the glycine and proline, then according to the peer pressure they are going to take or participate in this alpha helix formation. Understand? Clear? So what about the other amino acid? The same thing happens for the beta sheet. There are certain amino acids, specifically the large aromatic group containing amino acid like tyrosine, phenylalanine, tryptophan, threonine, valine, isoleucine. They all take part in beta sheet formation. They all have a tendency to form beta sheet. So whenever you have a particular domain that is rich with this particular amino acid, they tend to participate in beta sheet. So after you form the homology modeling, you are able to give 80% of the structure you are able to solve 80% of structure, but for the rest of the 20% you find out that these amino acids are there in the rest of the 20%, and in the rest of 20% you find out that yes, it is rich in tyrosine, phenylalanine, tryptophan, this kind of amino acid. Then obviously that part is going to obtain or that part is going to form a what? Beta sheet structure. Okay, and generally proline also tend to find in the edge of the beta sheet. Why? Because they prevent the amyloid formation. And what is amyloid formation? Just a minute. Okay. Okay. Now, generally what happens, in case of this protein, have you ever heard this name amyloid? Anyone? Have you heard this name amyloid? Okay. Acha.
Yes, sir.
Oh, you have. So, can you tell me why? What it is?
Sir, I heard about beta amyloid.
Yes, that will be good enough.
Sir, sir, it is I think related to Alzheimer's disease.
Very good, very good. But can you a little bit more? Can you explain a little bit more what it is and?
Sir, actually, if this protein is present, then the person can have a Alzheimer's disease.
Yes, absolutely. So, what is amyloid? Generally, amyloid means it's a aggregation. It's a aggregation of a protein. Generally, what happens, and you're absolutely right, Alzheimer's. But let me give you a more a related example. I think you have all heard the name called insulin, right? Now, insulin, what happens? Sometimes people who are actually diabetic, they have to, and sometimes people are really severely diabetic. So they actually have to take up this insulin injection, right? Who are unable to produce insulin, they have to take insulin injection. And generally, people who have to take insulin injection, what happens is that they generally take the insulin injection and they tend to push it into their under the skin. Okay. And once they take and push that injection under their skin for a long period of time, the insulin tend to get deposited there. Okay. And insulin, it also has some high beta sheet forming propensity. And those beta sheet, they tend to, the beta sheet, now one of the important thing about alpha helix that the alpha helix forms intrachain hydrogen bonds. What is intrachain hydrogen bond? Let me show you a particular protein structure, then it will be a little bit more easier for you to understand. Let me show you the insulin structure only. Okay, see, in this particular case, what happens, this alpha helix, when you have this alpha helix, so this is the alpha helix. Okay, so in this alpha helix, what happens, the hydrogen bonds are actually within this particular motif only. So in this particular case, what you have this particular molecule, it's binding to this I2 I plus 4 or I2 I plus 3 connection. That means this alpha helix is actually bonding to this alpha helix only. Okay, the amino acid that is participating in this alpha helix, it is actually forming a hydrogen bond with this amino acid which is participating in this alpha helix only, but not in the beta sheet. In beta sheet, what happens, they tend to form a hydrogen bond between different chain. This amino acid is going to have a hydrogen bond with this amino acid on this chain, while this amino acid at this particular chain is going to have a hydrogen bond with this amino acid with this other chain. Similarly, it's also going to have a hydrogen bond with this other chain. So that is the difference. That means when you have a particular alpha helix, it is not going to mess up the structure. It's only going to form alpha helix or hydrogen bond with the amino acid that is participating within the same alpha helix, not with the different alpha helix. Understand? But for beta sheet, it is not there. For beta sheet, suppose beta sheet 1, 2, 3, but amino acid in beta sheet 1 is going to have alpha helix hydrogen bond with the beta sheet 2, whereas amino acid beta sheet 2 is going to have a hydrogen bond with beta sheet 3, and this goes on and on. And when this happens, what happens? When this happens, then generally all these amino acid, and for insulin generally what happens, they tend to aggregate. They try to form they try to form hydrogen bond with different insulin monomer. And when several such insulin monomer tend to interact with one another, then they tend to what? They tend to interact with one another and they tend to aggregate. They tend to aggregate and they tend to get deposited into your brain or to that particular part, and that is how the people gets Alzheimer's. That is how people get Alzheimer's. In Alzheimer, what happens? The particular protein, it forms hydrogen bond with a different monomer of protein, and when several such hydrogen bonds forms, then it tend to aggregate that particular protein, and as a result the protein deposits into your brain and you get Alzheimer and you get variety of diseases. You have prion disease and you get variety of diseases. And in fact, this is also too common with insulin. It's also very common with insulin, and that's why generally what happens, the people who take insulin, the aggregation occurs, and that is why the people who take insulin regularly, they tend to get this amyloid formation or this lump formation or tumor formation under their skin. Now that tumor is not cancerous, that is only due to the insulin aggregation, and insulin tends to deposit under their skin also. And remember I was showing you a structure that I have solved, the insulin structure. So that particular molecule that we have designed, that molecule can actually prevent this insulin aggregation. And it also makes insulin stabilized at room temperature. So as a result, you don't have to keep insulin at 4 degrees centigrade. You don't have to maintain that cold temperature. Okay. So if you simply negate out the cold temperature thing from insulin, you are simply making sure you are making the price of insulin is going to drop a lot. So now if an insulin costs around 800 rupees, now if you simply remove the cold chain, the insulin is going to cost around 100 or 50 rupees. Okay, so it will be a huge benefit for a lot of people, and lower class people who are unable to buy insulin for this high cost and all, they will also be able to buy this insulin and use them. So currently we are actually talk with a particular company who are going to actually take up this insulin molecule and market it, so that they don't have to maintain the cold chain as well. So it's going to be a profit for the normal common people as well as for the company who are making insulin. So that's the beauty of the particular thing that we have designed molecule. Okay, so this is why generally what happens whenever you have this particular beta sheet, at the edge of beta sheet you have prolines, because proline are unable to form hydrogen bond. So at the edge, if you have proline, what happens? They are unable to form that hydrogen bond, and as a result what happens? They don't form amyloid, and it's a preventive measure from the body as well to prevent protein aggregation, because your body does not want you to feel or get that particular Alzheimer disease. Okay, so it's a preventive mechanism for the body as well. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that is why you get to see that beta prolines are usually present at the edge of the beta sheets. Okay, or at the end of the beta sheets, because they prevent this all insulin aggregation, not insulin aggregation, but any protein aggregation. They prevent this particular sort of thing. So usually by this method, the software or the algorithm identifies what kind of amino acids are there in your protein and then try to develop a structure accordingly. Okay, so now we're going to go into detail into the protein structure prediction. So there are actually 4 stages of protein structure prediction. The first stage is actually the backbone prediction. What is backbone prediction? The backbone prediction means prediction of the entire backbone. That means the prediction of what is backbone. What's the backbone of protein? Come on, we discussed it last class.
Peptide bond.
Peptide bond, absolutely the peptide bond. It discusses and destroys makes up the whole peptide bond. That is the beauty. because it actually depends, because upon the backbone it depends whether the molecule is going to have a alpha helix, or which part is going to have beta sheaf, or which part is going to have the loop structure, or which part is going to have the random coil structure. It all depends upon the backbone. So that is the first step. It predicts the entire backbone of your molecule. Okay. And there are generally three methods for backbone prediction. One is the ab initio method. What is ab initio method? When you have no common motif, suppose you have uploaded a particular protein molecule to find out the structure. So what the molecule is going to do? The server is going to first go into the RCSB PDB website and try to find out if your RCSB PDB website have any similar protein whose structures is solved or not. So they are going to scan all the proteins. Yes, all the proteins. If there are 1 lakh proteins or 10,000 proteins whose structure are solved, it is going to scan all the 10,000 protein and try to find out if any one of the protein is going to have similar structure or similar sequence like your protein or not. And if they found out yes, they have similar sequence, then it is going to assume and give you the and say that yes, if the sequence is similar, then the structure is going to be similar, because because everyone follows the what? Structure activity relationship. That is, if the structure is similar, the activity will be similar. If the sequence is similar, it is going to have similar structure and function as well. So first what it's going to do, it's going to take a look into the RCSB PDB website and scan all the protein range and try to find out if they have similar sequence or not. And if they have similar, if they found out that there is no protein like your protein whose structure is solved, then they are going to use the ab initio method to solve your protein structure. Or they are going to use, if they find out yes, there are some proteins which have similar structure like your protein, or which have similar sequence like your protein, and if you have similar sequence, then obviously the structure is going to be similar. So in that case, it's going to apply the homology modeling method to find out the structure of your protein. And apart from that, there is also another method, and that is the protein threading method. And what happens in protein threading? In protein threading, rather than finding out the similarity in the whole protein structure, it simply breaks up the protein into multiple small fragments and try to find out the similarity in that small fragment. For example, you have a 100 amino acid long protein, so it is going to break up the protein into small fragment of 10 amino acid long. So it's going to break up the protein in 10 fragments and it's going to find out if there are any protein with that 10 amino acid sequence similarity. And obviously 10 amino acid sequence similarity is going to be a lot of protein is going to have 10 amino acid sequence similarity, right? Because the lower the probability is going to be more if the volume is lower, right? So it's going to try to find out if any protein has that 10 amino acid same sequence or not. And if they have, then it's going to ascertain that structure of the 10 amino acid long motif, and then again ascertain the structure of the 10 amino acid long motif, then again ascertain the structure of 10 amino acid long motif, and it's going to find out all the structure of 10 amino acid long fragments, and then it's going to join all the fragments together and give you the entire structure. It is simply like drawing each fragment part by part. For example, if someone asks you to design or draw suppose it's like simply sculpting a particular statue. If someone asks you to draw a statue or design a statue, what you can do, you can simply take a whole rock and you can start with the head, and starting from the head you can draw up everything and then have the entire structure and make sure that everything is fine and do it like that. Or what can you do? Or the other method is that you can simply use you can sculpt the hand first, you can sculpt the legs later, you can sculpt out the belly in a different manner, and then simply allow all of them together. and you can simply use all of them together to find out if they are matching with what, and then simply join them together. Are you getting me?
Yes, sir.
And simply join them together, you are going to get the entire structure. So that is the protein threading part. You are simply making sure that you have all the structure, you are developing all the structure part by part and simply joining them later. Okay, so that is how the structure is made up. So that's how the backbone is predicted first. So after the backbone prediction is done, then you have to model the loops. What is loop? The loop is that particular part where the structures is going to be different. That means the part is not going to have a alpha helix or a beta sheet structure. It's going to have a random structure, and that is where the difficulty lies, because loop doesn't have a proper structure, and it's really difficult to give a structure to something which doesn't have a structure. Because how are you going to know what the structure is? For example, if I simply say you simply draw the structure of air, how am I going to draw the structure of air? It is not a stable thing. It is not like that. First of all, I can't see it, and second of all, even if I can't see it, I can say that okay, simply then draw the structure of a gas, and I'm going to make sure that the gas is pink in color. So it will be really difficult for you to draw the picture of a gas, because it's going to have a random structure. It's going to take up the structure of the container where you are keeping it, right? It doesn't have a proper structure. So same thing, the loop doesn't have a proper structure. So the next thing is to model the loops. Okay, after it models the loop, then you have to model the side chain. You have to pack the side chain. Packaging side chain means, side chain packaging means whether the side chain is actually focusing inward or the side chain is facing outward, whether the side chain is actually moving inside or the side chain is moving outside. That is what you need to see. Why? Because it really depends a lot with the side chain packaging. Because if you have a active site and then the pockets, amino acids that is lining up the active site, they might focus, and if the side chains are present, if the side chains are not pointing outside, then what might happen? The side chain might move inside the active site, and if the side chain moves inside the active site, then it is going to be a big blunder. Why? Because it's going to diminish the volume of active site. It is going to diminish the volume of active site. So you can't have that. So that is why active site must have you must patch the entire side chain. So make sure that everything is pointing outside. Each thing is first of all pointing outside, or it is pointing inside. They have a proper orientation. Okay. And after that, you have to refine the entire structure. That means minimizing the protein structure or energy. Because if you don't minimize the energy, you are not going to have the proper structure. Because the protein have multiple structures. The protein have, and as I have told you, according to the energy of the protein, the structure might change. Because usually the protein have a stable structure when it is at an energetically minimized condition, right? So you have to make sure that the protein is at the energetically minimum formation, and you have to make sure there is no steric hindrance. You have to make sure that all of the atoms are actually steric, not overlapping with one another, and all this falls under the structure refinement part. And after that, it is going to give you the total structure of the particular protein. So now we'll talk about the ab initio modeling first. So what happens in ab initio modeling is that this particular ab initio method was actually given by this Anfinsen. So he deduced that. So I just first tell me, according to this till now, what have you learned about this ab initio and homology? What do you think is the best method for protein structure?
Homology is homology.
Homology modeling. Very good. But why?
We can know about the similar sequences we can know, and the rest of the structure we can predict out by knowing the amino acid.
The amino acid. Very good. But why not ab initio method?
Ab initio method, if you cannot find any um, structure in the protein database,
Okay,
then
very
you
good.
can go.
Okay, very good. But you know, actually, in general, in our body, the protein actually folds according to the ab initio method. Actually, by ab initio method, only the protein folding occurs in our body. In nature, the protein folds according to the ab initio method because it actually protein doesn't identify, it doesn't know in your body. It doesn't know whether you have a homology model or you have a homologous protein in your body or not. It simply depends upon the amino acid property. It simply depends upon the chemical property of the amino acids for a protein structure, and that's how the protein folding occurs in originally in our body, right? So that is why ab initio method is actually the best method or the most accurate method for protein structuring. But that is not possible outside our body cell. Why? Because we are yet to understand the actual mathematical equations of this proper folding. We know that that's the best method, but the equation that we have developed, it is not foolproof. Each day people are working and trying to find out all these equations of this van der Waals equation, the hydrogen bonding, everything by which the ab initio method occurs. People are actually trying to find it out, and until the day we get absolute equation which can deduce and which can say that yes, this is the method by which the proper folding occurs, we can't for sure, we can't say that this is the best method. Okay, and still every day people are actually working, the physicists are working and mathematicians are working, and they are actually finding out more and more thing about this particular method. They're trying to find out more and more method of this particular thing, and uh, about these equations, and they're updating the equations, and more they update the equations, the more we are going to learn that yes, this is the best method there is. Okay, so until the day comes that we get a foolproof equation, homology model is the best method which can give you the most accurate structure. But the day when we truly identify and get to know the accurate mechanism or accurate equation which of this van der Waals equation or of the different equations or the energies that actually make the protein folding or protein connections proper, homology method will be the best method. So that's why ab initio modeling method is actually, though that is the method by which protein folding actually occurs in our body, but it is not the foolproof method yet by which we can identify the protein structure. Okay, so this is the method by which was actually developed by Anfinsen, and it is actually based upon the thermodynamic property. It actually depends upon the thermodynamic property of this whole protein structure, and it identifies accordingly. Okay, and so what it does, it actually tries to find out all the different connections a particular amino acid can make, and then try to find out the hydrogen bonding propensity of each of the amino acid, and try to analyze and acknowledge that yes, this amino acid can make a connection with that, this can make a connection with that, and they try to dwell on that particular information and develop a method, and they develop a method like that so that it can be a foolproof method. But still, as I've told you, since the equations are not highly classified, it is not yet updated totally, the equations actually falters a lot. Okay, and it actually completely depends upon the protein sequence. So whatever protein sequence you upload, according to that particular protein information and sequence information, the structuring actually occurs. Okay, so let's try to first find out and see how the protein structuring we can actually perform the protein structuring. So server that we're going to use for protein structure prediction is RAWbeta. Okay, okay, so if I click on this particular link, as you click on this particular link, this particular page will open up. So this is the RAWbeta page. Okay, So this Robita is one of the server. It's also actually a web-based server that can actually give you and validate and give you the 3D structure of the protein. And this is one of the best server there is for protein structure prediction. And what's the most important thing is that this particular Robita is actually continuously evaluated by Cameo. Cameo is one of the what should I say? It's actually a body that maintains and updates the algorithm each day. Each day, whenever you get a particular, there's a major breakthrough is done either in the hydrogen bonding or on a particular protein structuring or a particular new mathematical equations have been developed for van der Waals interactions or for ionic interactions or disulfide bond interactions. They try to develop and try to find out and they update that particular algorithm according to that equations. And you see, this is the updation that they have made. This is the updation that they have made. They continuously update this particular algorithm. Okay, and that is why this is the most best method by which you can actually try to find out the what should I say, this protein structure. Okay, now this is the main page, but I think you might need to register to this particular portal. Okay, and this is done, and this registration is actually required because this service is free for the academic users. And since, as I've told you, this is a very good method and one of the best methods for protein structure prediction, many people, and not only from academic institutes but also from non-academic sector like from the industry sector, they also use this server for their protein structure prediction. And what happens is that for that there's a huge load on this server, and this is a free web-based service that they provide for the academic people. And since you have to register with it with your academic email ID, so that they know that you are from academic background, you don't have money, and you have to, they are going to give you the service for free. But if you are into the pharma industry, you have a lot of money. But as I have told you that they have maintained, they continuously updates this thing, and for that they need to maintain a proper team. Okay, and sometimes what happens is that if you sometimes fail to update or get a proper good structure, you might mail them that I'm not getting a proper structure of this particular protein. And if you mail them, they're going to check your protein, they're going to update them, and they're going to take a look into it, into that particular matter, and they're going to solve your problem for you. And for that, they require a dedicated team, and this dedicated team require a pay balance, right? And for that, they take money from the non-academic sector, and that is why you need to register into this particular thing, so that you don't have to pay money, okay, or else you have to pay money. So just simply register with your academic email ID, institute email ID or your university email ID, and you're good to go. So after that, what you have to do, there is an option called structure prediction here. So click here, and then you're going to find the option called submit. Okay, so click on submit. So once you click on submit, a page or a submission page is going to open up, and this submission page is going to give you the just a minute. Actually, this week I was tremendously ill. I had fever for 3 straight days, and the fever ranged from 102 to 101 degrees centigrade, and it was I had to take an antibiotic course, and I was really weak. So, and accordingly I got it was a viral fever, so I also got a stomach flu and all. That's why I got a cough. And this is the first time I'm taking a class in this particular week. I also had some other classes. I had to skip all those things. I was really sick to take all the classes. So that's what since I'm speaking for a long time, I tend to get what? I can't hear you. No, I'm feeling well. It's that since I'm speaking for a long time, I'm just, I need to drink a little bit of water. Just wait for a minute. I'm feeling well actually. Actually this is the first day actually I can actually sit on a chair and speak to you. But earlier this week I was really so down that I could hardly take a class, and I could actually hardly get up from the bed, and it actually made me so weak. And today actually the first time I also went out. Actually also went out and took a round around my locality so that I could feel that yes, I'm still healthy. Okay, okay. So see. So once you open it, this is a particular panel. Now first what you have to do, you have to write down the name of the protein. Okay, now you can give any name. For example, you can write down the name of protein or something, any protein name. And then you have to upload your protein sequence. Now, where are you going to get the protein sequence? The UniProt, right? So that is why you require all the databases. That is why these databases are really important for us to know these protein sequences. Okay. Suppose I simply want to get a particular protein. Now obviously we have to take a protein whose structure is unsolved, but currently I'm taking simply a protein. I'm taking just single protein, any protein. I'm not keen on whether the structure is solved or not solved. I'm simply showing you how to do it. Okay. Now in this particular case, what you have to do is, see, in this particular case, if you hover your pointer to this question mark, it is going to say you what to do. For example, see, in this particular case, they say that enter your protein sequence using single letter amino acid code. So you don't need to upload the FASTA format. If you upload the FASTA format, for example, let me see that I have selected the FASTA format. So if I upload the FASTA format, see, they are going to say that invalid amino acid sequence. Check for invalid character. Why? Because this greater than sign is a non-amino acid character. SP15629, these are all non-amino acid characters. So we have to only upload the protein in one letter code, only the protein, not the FASTA format. Okay, so simply upload the protein structure. Make sure I am rearranging it a little so that it becomes a completely new protein. Okay. I'm making some rearrangement so that it becomes a completely new protein. Okay, so suppose you have to upload the protein sequence, that's all. But there is another important issue here, and that is the protein length should be, it should vary from 27 to 1000 amino acid long. So it can't be less than 27, it can't be more than 1000. It should be within that particular domain. Okay, but if you are using a comparative modeling method, see, there is an option called for CM only. CM is the comparative modeling, and that is homology modeling. For comparative modeling or homology modeling, you can use a length till 2000 amino acid. Okay, but usually the protein is not that long. Usually a protein is it is generally within 1000 amino acid, but yes, sometimes you're going to find a protein which might have 1200 or 1500 amino acid long, might be that. Okay, so once you have that particular thing, then what to do? Now this what is done. Now the next thing is the important is optional. Now under the optional part, you have one option called Rosetta fold. Then you have the TRCM AB. So let's start with AB. What is AB? Now hover your pointer to this question mark and get to know. AB is actually the ab initio modeling. So if you want to solve your protein structure, so if you know that your protein doesn't have a homology model, it doesn't have any homologous protein, and this is a completely novel protein, and it doesn't have any homologous protein, then obviously you can select the ab initio method. And it's only if you are sure that your protein doesn't have any homologous protein, and obviously since it's your protein, nobody will know better than you, right? So that's why it's completely up to you to solve the structure and by what method you're going to solve the structure. Or you might do one thing, you can also use, you might solve a protein structure using ab initio method, you can solve the protein structure using comparative modeling method and compare and see how are they different from one another. Okay, so you might solve the so if you want to solve the protein by ab initio method, simply click on AB method and that's all. That's all, it will be done. So after it is done, next is the CM method. CM method is what? It's the comparative modeling method, and comparative modeling is another name of homology modeling. So if you select CM method, what is going to do? If you select CM method, this server is automatically going to go to this RCSB PDB website and it is going to search the entire reporter of the protein here, and using this particular sequence find out that if any protein they have similar sequence like this protein or not. And if they find out yes, there is a particular protein and that particular protein has this particular domain similar to this protein, suppose they find out that that particular protein has a domain, suppose this particular domain is similar to this insulin protein, so they're going to take the structure from this insulin protein and they're going to provide that this particular protein or this, at least this fragment, is going to have a structure like this. This is the alpha helix. Suppose this fragment has a, this fragment and this fragment is similar, so they're going to take that particular structure and ascertain that structure to that particular fragment. So like that they're going to again search for this domain in all the protein in this RCSB PDB and give a similar structure, and they're going to do like that. But how are they going to do it? They're going to use sequence alignment method. They're going to take this particular structure and they're going to align all the proteins that are present in this particular RCSB PDB, and there are actually 180419 biological macromolecule, but that molecule means both protein, DNA, RNA, but among them at least 50% of them are going to be protein. So it's going to align this particular sequence with all the, at least all the protein structures that are present here and find out, try to find out the sequence similarity with your molecule. And once they find out the sequence similarity, it's going to go for the homology modeling and I'll ascertain and allow and give that particular unique domain or unique structure to that particular domain. And after homology modeling, if they find out that yes, there is this particular segment where we can't find out any homology, then whether you select comparative modeling or anything, if they fail to find out homology, they are going to use ab initio method only. So whether you select ab initio method or not, if they fail to find out homology, they are automatically going to use ab initio method to solve your protein structure. So after CM method, what's there? Now suppose you already know that this particular protein has a PDB, has a homologous protein. You already know. Now in that particular case, you don't want to this particular server or algorithm to find out the homology model. What you can do, you can automatically write down the PDB ID. For example, suppose this is a insulin molecule. Suppose it's an insulin molecule, and you know that this particular molecule is same to this particular protein only. So what you're going to do, you're going to automatically write down the PDB ID like that. So this is the PDB ID 7ELJ. So this is the 7ELJ. You're going to write down the PDB ID, and suppose if there are multiple proteins like that, for example, remember sometime it had 2 or more chains. For example, in this particular case, I was showing you that it had 4 chains in case of VEGFA. Remember, in case of this particular VEGFA, there were 4 proteins. Remember, there were 4 chains. ABCD 4 chains, and suppose this B chain is, you know that this is common to the B chain. So what you have to do, you are going to write down 7ELJ and plus B. So it's rather than finding out all the, now say it's saying that could not fetch 7ELJ plus A because input chain is missing in template, because I don't have that kind of chain here, because in my molecule I don't have that kind of chain here. Okay, so that's why it says it's missing. So remember, so you see that this is highly accurate. Okay, so you have to do that kind of thing, or if you don't have any chain, simply don't have to write down anything. You can simply write down this kind of thing and that will be enough. So see, once I uploaded the chain, it automatically uploaded that particular protein. So see, it automatically uploaded that particular protein. So they are taking that template only, but you are going to only do that when you know for sure that this is the molecule and this is the template molecule. And based on this template, kindly you are asking the server to kindly solve the structure based on this template only. and if you are not sure your molecule has any homologue or not, you don't have to write anything. Okay, you don't have to write anything. And see, the sequence have been was realigned, and see it starts with SFLQ. SFLQ, it says that S doesn't match with G, it is not matching, not CC is matching, so CC is matching, this C is matching, the QQ matching, L matching, N matching. So this is how the entire protein structure is matching. Okay, so this is how they're going to, and since it's happening because I have messed up the structure, okay, so it's only going to happen when you give a particular, upload a particular PDB molecule, and once you do it, it's going to align it like that. Okay, but since I'm not uploading anything, I am not sure, you don't have to do anything. Okay, apart from it, the next method is the TR method. What is TR method? See, TR Rosetta, this is the deep learning method. And what is deep learning method? This is actually a, this particular TR method is this Rosetta fold. This particular method is an updated version of this TR method. But so what is TR method? So this is a deep learning method. Now every day a lot of people actually uploads this particular protein structure to find out a protein model, right? They upload a particular protein to find out a model, and what happens that sometimes this model, and when they upload, the system remembers what kind of structure they are ascertaining to a particular protein. For example, suppose you have this particular sequence SFLQ. So the system remembers that this SFLQ structure or this SFLQ sequence usually gives rise to an alpha helix nature. But sometimes what happens, a lot of people says that the SFLQ doesn't have alpha helix. Whether they give alpha helix or not, they change that alpha helix to beta sheet, or they change that beta sheet to alpha helix or something like that. So the server remembers how the people are behaving to this particular sequence, and they remember how people are changing the sequence or changing the structure, and using all the information around the globe, because each day at least 10,000 people are submitting a protein sequence here to solve the structure. Okay, and it remembers the outcome of all the service, and it also remembers the outcome of how the people are responding to these queries, and it actually remembers everything and then uses this information to predict your structure, and that is how it uses this. So this Rosetta fold is actually the best method currently to solve your structure. Now you might use the comparative modeling method, but this Rosetta fold is actually the best method to, and this is the most latest method, because this Rosetta fold was literally this was updated just last month. I think it was just updated last month. And what it does, rather than finding out the entire stretch, it tries to find out structure of small fold molecule. Rather than finding out the alignment of this entire protein, it tries to find out what is the structure of this particular motif. What is the structure of this particular motif? What is the structure of this particular motif? What is the structure of this particular motif? And then it actually joins all the motif together to give you a proper structure. Now while doing this, it uses the comparative modeling, it uses the ab initio method. So it actually uses every method that is there and gives you a, it combines all the method, so that the structure that you're going to get is the most advanced or the most accurate method. Understand? So that is why if you need to solve the structure, always currently go for the Rosetta fold. But yes, if you are keen on finding out only the homology rather than using the deep learning based method, then obviously you are free to go to the comparative modeling method also. But currently Rosetta fold is the best method to solve your protein structure. Okay, so it's done. So after it is done, you can use the Rosetta fold method and then simply solve this thing. 3 plus 2 is what? It's 5, and then click on submit. That's all. It's going to take up some time to solve the structure and give you the result. But there is one more thing that I need to say, and what is that? And that is, for example, see in the AB section or in the CM method of, since I have write down, I have already removed it, but still it is showing one thing, and it is showing the, see, open fragment panel and open constant panel. Let me click on ab initio. There is an option called open constant panel, open fragment panel. Now remember, in the last class I showed you Chow and Fasman method.
Yes, sir.
Where we identified the what is the probability of a particular molecule to attain what structure, right?
Yes, sir.
That information are also going to use. How? See, in the fragment panel, if you click on the fragment panel, you are going to see that there is a one option there. It's written 1MC, 2AH, 3IE, right? What is this? This means that you are allowing or asking the molecule to give a proper structure. For example, suppose, let me open up the Chow and Fasman. Okay, see, in this particular case, when I upload the structure, it says that this particular molecule, the S is going to have a turn, whereas the F is going to have a structure called E, right? So this particular domain is going to have a structure like helix, whereas this particular FLE might have a structure called beta sheet. But this particular, it is pretty sure that this QFNK, this particular structure is going to have a helix like structure. I can also incorporate this information here also. How? So I know that the first method, now this S, it has a propensity to turn into a form a turn, because it doesn't participate in a helix, it doesn't participate in the beta sheet formation, but it actually forms a turn. Okay. So here in the fragment panel, in the fragment panel, I'm going to write down 1. That means the first, I'm going to write down the first amino acid 1 S. It has a propensity to participate in a turn, and turn has a theory of 0.000 plus 0.000 1.000. And I'm also asking, say that suppose this F and L. Now I'm sure that this F and L, it might have a helix, it might have a epsilon, it might have a beta sheet, I'm not sure. But I'm sure that this fourth amino acid or the Q is going to be alpha helix, right? Because it doesn't have a propensity to form beta sheet. It will be alpha helix. So I'm also going to write down, say that the fourth amino acid, that is Q, is going to be a alpha helix. And for helix, it's going to be 1.000, 0.000, 0.000. Okay. So like that. And after that, suppose this particular cysteine, this is suppose a 10 cysteine, it has a propensity to form a coil. So again, I'm going to write down. So or suppose beta sheet. It has a propensity to participate in a beta sheet. Suppose this Y, it might participate in a beta sheet. So you might also help the surfer and say, suppose that particular E is 12T. Okay, I'm just simply writing it. E, it has a tendency to participate in beta sheet, and beta sheet has a structure of 0.000, 1.000, 0.000, and then next. So if you get the information from here, you could also incorporate those information here, and it's going to invalid lines because the 12th is not E, 12th is not E. So you have to make sure that you are making this the residue number is actually matching. Okay, since my residues number is not matching, it is giving me a error. So make sure the residues number is matching. Okay, so after you do this, so this is how you can also use or incorporate the Chow and Fastman information that you get to in your this particular, what is this, in this 3D modeling server, so that the 3D modeling server also get added information for your structure prediction. Understand? What?
What this numerical simplify
No, numericals, it's just an option. For example, for this is the XYZ coordinate. Okay, but generally for alpha helix it is, you have the x will be 1.0, whereas for the all the rest of the term will be 0. For beta sheet the first will be 0, sorry, the x will be 0, y will be 1, z will be 0. Okay, this is a normal how one should actually write down this. Okay, this is how one should actually represent. It's a part of representation pattern. Okay, nothing more. So if you have other information, now this information you can get from this Chow and Fastman, or you could also get this information from the experimental sections also. For example, suppose if you are writing down, or if you are working with if you are performing NMR experiment. Okay, suppose you have performed NMR experiment with this particular protein, and from NMR you got a small fragments, and from the small fragment you already know that this particular fragment has a alpha helix sheet or alpha helix nature, and you get to identify these 4 amino acid can participate in alpha helix formation. So you can upload those information here, but how to upload? See, using the constraint panel. So see, when I click on constant panel, automatically some of the informations are given here, how to write it down. For example, you see that atom pair Ca1 Ca10 bounded 000 8.0001. What is this? This is the constraint panel. That means from NMR experiment you can get constraints. For example, NMR experiment is automatically going to show you which atom is connected to which atom. Okay, or how one atom is connected to other atom, and whether that connection is due to a van der Waals interaction or a hydrogen bond interaction. This information you can actually gather from the NMR experiment. So if you have already performed the NMR experiment, and it's generally very difficult to now you might say that if I am doing NMR, so why I am not solving the structure using NMR? Because from NMR it is really difficult to solve the structure of a very long protein. If you have a protein, if you have a very small protein like insulin, or a protein length of 50, 60, 100 amino acid long, you can solve the structure of that particular. Though 100 amino acid long protein structure solving is really difficult, but solving a structure of 30, 40 amino acid long is possible in NMR. But if you have a protein length of 1000 amino acid long, it is impossible to solve the structure using NMR. But using NMR you might get certain constraints. That these constraints will be help, because if you add those constraints to this structure formation, it's going to make sure that the structure is beautiful, because I am already stating that my atom Ca, my first atom and my 10th atom is bonded. I am already stating that my 57th atom and my 78th atom is already bonded to one another, and I am providing this information. So whatever happens, the first thing the server is going to do is going to make sure that the 78th and 56th is bonded to one another. Whatever happens, that bond is never going to break up, and they are going to arrange all the other structure accordingly, but they are not going to break up the bond. Understand? So that is how the structure that you have is going to be more meaningful to you. So that is why you might upload the fragment secondary structure by finding out the fragment secondary structure using the NMR experiment, or by the extra crystallography, or by finding from this CFA Chow and Fastman method. Okay, or you can, if you have already performed NMR, you can upload the constant panel as well. Understand? Because these things are going to make sure that your molecule is having a better structure. Its molecule is having a much better structure. Understand? Clear? Okay.
Yes.
So after it is done, and after that, now this part is again there for the CM method also, ab initio method also. Okay. So whether you done, after that this particular thing is done, or all you have to do is what? Simply solve this 3+2 thing, and then simply click on submit. And once you click on submit, it's going to upload it into that particular server. And once it is uploaded, it's going to take some time, and it actually depends upon the server load, the length of your protein, and they're going to send you a mail. Okay, they're going to send you a mail that your job is done with a link. And once you click on the link, you're going to come to that particular page. They're going to say that this is your protein model, and you're going to download the protein model, visualize it in PyMol, and you can play up with that particular molecule and see what kind of different models we have and whatnot. Clear? Okay,
Yes,
so in this particular case, do one thing. In this week, kindly upload a particular protein molecule, okay, and make sure you have a particular protein sequence or protein structure ready. And the next class, what we're going to do, we're going to analyze this particular protein structure. We're going to solve see how different kind of. Now, usually it is not going to give you a single model. Sometimes it might give you a single model. It might give you multiple models. And if it gives you multiple models, it will be, we have to analyze and see how to know which model is the best model, right? So we have to analyze the model. So I'm going to show you how to analyze the model, what are the different things that we can do to analyze these models and all. Okay. And after that, we're going to see and watch that how we can actually that I'm going to show up in the next class only. It's not going to make any sense right now if I tell you. Okay, but let me show you how. Let me discuss the example result at least. So see, and the structure is an example. It's not this particular result. It's an example result. Okay. So once you click on that particular link, this particular thing is going to open up. A page like this is going to open up. It's going to show up and say this is the structure. So it's going to use up this will be a protein sequence, and this is how according to deep concentration this will be the protein structure. According to the cypret, this will be the protein structure. According to spider 3, this will be the protein structure. Okay, and like that it is going to show up different models of your protein. Now in this particular case there are 5 models. Okay, now see the first model, this is the error estimate bar. So what is error estimate bar? Now each model is actually, when they solve the structure of a particular model, they have a unique nature. For example, this particular case, see, so this is the first methionine. So methionine is the first methionine. Okay, so the first methionine, how much error is associated with the position of this particular methionine? So it has an error of 0.66. It is really low. Remember, the RMS, this is the RMSD value or the error estimate. Okay, the error, the lower the error, the much better your structure. Now in this particular case, the error is below 1.5 angstrom, and that is very good. If it is below 1.5, it is very good model, and lower the better. Okay, so let's understand it. So the first model, the methionine, has an error rate of 0.66. That is really low. It's really low. So we can know that this particular positioning of this methionine is perfect. But what about this model? This is 65th amino acid, that is aspartic acid. This has a rate of 0.13. So 0.13 means it is further lower. That means it is beautiful. That means it have accurately predicted the structure of aspartic acid, and the error associated with the positioning of this aspartic acid in this alpha helix is really low. And remember, so suppose see, this is the alpha helix, and see, whenever a molecule is present in the beta sheet or in the alpha helix, the error is really low. But whenever the molecule is present in the loop region, the error rate is high, because the loop has different structure. They don't have any proper structure, and that is why you see this particular case, the glutamate 141. Where is glutamate 141? See, this is the glutamate 141 present in this loop. It has an error of 1.31. It is really high. But what about this particular glutamate 149? This is also glutamate 149. Glutamate 149. This is 141. So what is 149? See, 140, 146, 149 कहाँ गया? Where is 149? Oh, 149 is somewhere here. Yeah, see, 149 is 1.0.43 because this is present in the alpha helix, whereas this glutamate present in loop, it has an error rate of 1.31. Okay, that is why it has a higher propensity of having an error. Okay, so by looking at this particular error and of this model, we get to see which is better model. So see, in this model 1, the highest error that it has is actually 1.31, and maximum of them have a error rate lower than 1. Okay, what about model 5? See, in model 5, the average error rate is actually 2, or at least 1. The average error rate is 2 because highest is of 3.91, and as you can see, maximum error rate is present in this model 5. So that means this model 5 is not a very good model because maximum of them have a very high error rate. In case of model 1, see this particular the 50th or the 61st amino acid had an error rate of 0.13. In case of model 1, the 61st still had a error rate of 0.66. Okay, and in that particular case it had an error rate of 0.15, right? In this particular case it has a 0.66. So you get to see that is the higher error rate. So that is why you have to analyze all these models and see the error rate here. In this particular case, see, as we focus on the model, the error rate is slowly increasing. See, model 4, model 5, you get to see that the error rate is actually increasing, right? So you have to use this particular error rate, and using this you can actually see how much the error is there. And obviously the best model, and they analyzed it like that and they give you a model. But remember, always do not think since the model 5 has a high error rate that means it is a very bad model. No, it might be that even though it has a high error rate, it might be the proper structure. It might have a proper structure. Okay, understand? So don't make sure it is not like that since it's a model 5 it will be a bad model. No, though according to the error rate estimate the model 1 is the best model, but sometime it might be that the model 5 might be the best model. Okay, so it actually depends upon expertise. It actually depends upon the expertise. It actually depends upon your intelligence to find out which is the best model, because it's at the end of the day it's your protein. So you have to analyze the protein, you have to analyze the structure, you have to find out and see how the protein structure is standing, featuring, and then you have to give the protein structure like that. Okay, understand? And you can download these models. Okay, you can download these models. For example, see, there is an option called download here. So I have this model 1. Simply click on download and you see that you have all coordinate less than 1, less than 2, less than 3, less than 4, less than 5, or simply download all coordinate. If you want to download the less than 1 angstrom error, simply click on less than 1 angstrom error coordinate and only that coordinate will get downloaded. Okay, clear? Okay, so the next class we're going to analyze the model, but how can I be sure only by seeing the error rate? I can't be sure only by seeing the error rate that the model is bad or model is good. So the next class we're going to analyze each of the models. We're going to get a particular structure of a particular protein. We're going to analyze all of the models. The number of how we're going to analyze it, we're going to see the next class. then we're going to use the PyMol to visualize our molecule, and there are various diverse functions of PyMols also that we're going to see in the next class. All right. Okay. Fine. Fine. Okay. So any question? Shweta, actually there's a huge beep is coming, but I'm unable to hear it.
So, sir, actually, this is the task for the next day.
Can you be a little louder? I can't hear it. Can you simply type it down?
Okay, sir.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So if nobody has any question, you can simply get out of the class. Don't worry. I'm going to send you the lecture also. Yes, actually I'm going to give you a task at the end of the whole course. But yes, for the next class, it will be better if you find out a particular protein. Let me give you the assignment right now only. Try to find out a particular protein whose structure is unsolved. Okay, a particular protein.
Sir, how do I find out a protein which structure is still unknown?
Using knowledge base, that means using the journals and by the UniProt databases. You have to read out a lot of papers. You have to simply go to the Google, read a lot of paper, and in the database, UniProt database, try to find out a lot of proteins whose structure is unsolved, and obviously you have to cross check by the same name using the RCSB PDB website. And if there is no hit and you find out yes, in the RCSB PDB website also you don't have any protein like that, then the protein structure is not solved. Then you have to take that particular protein, extract the information, and then submit that particular protein structure sequence in the raw data and solve the structure. Okay.
Okay,
and for
sir.
that you have to do a lot of searching. You have to do a lot of you have to search in Google a lot. You have to find out how to do it. So that's the task. Okay.
So which journals should we follow? Like Nature is there and another.
What?
So Nature journal is there and another journals like PubMed and all.
Yeah, you simply use PubMed only, not only Nature. You can simply use PubMed or simply try to find out. Just let me see what you do. Okay, if you are unable to find out a particular protein, let me see how you approach this particular problem. And if you are unable to find it out, obviously I'm going to give you a particular protein whose structure is unsolved. But let me see how you tackle this particular problem on your own. Then I'm going to help you. Okay, don't worry. Okay, so that will be all, students. So thank you, and I'm going to send you